No universo da alta relojoaria, poucos nomes brilham tanto quanto Gérald Genta, um visionário cujos designs ousados transformaram uma indústria inteira e cujas criações se tornaram ícones atemporais. Mas por trás de toda grande lenda existe uma história de família, amor e legado. Hoje, no canal Relógios Sem Fronteiras, pessoal, tenho o privilégio de compartilhar com vocês minha conversa com Alexia Genta, filha de Gérald e Evelyn Genta, que hoje carrega toda essa herança extraordinária. Como vocês vão ver, Alexia nos oferece um olhar íntimo sobre a vida de um dos maiores nomes da história da relojoaria. Pessoal, por favor, não se esqueçam de deixar seu like, se inscrevam no canal, deixem seus comentários. Pessoal, muito obrigado por assistir. Curte a entrevista aí. Have you ever been to Brazil? Have you been down here already or not yet?
No, sadly, I haven't had the opportunity. I've met so many friends, especially through university from Brazil, who always invite me, but sadly, I never had the time. So one day for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Brazil, it's a very unique country, has a lot of issues, but it's a beautiful country. It's a big country, so much to offer. And I think when it comes to watches, at least Brazil always had a huge potential, of the population and, but in other aspects, for the culture that we have. But I think now, for the past couple of years, the watch world has really taken, starting to realize, the importance of watchmaking, horology. And of course, a lot of people are getting to know your name, Genta, and all the work that your father did. So it's wonderful to see, because as I was saying, I lived in the UK for a few years, and that's where my passion for watches started. But to see this now, happening in Brazil, I think is fantastic, and I think it speaks volumes of the work that your father did. But before we go into, his work and all that, can you just tell me, because today now you run the Gérald Genta Heritage. Can you tell me what you do, what it's about, what's its mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, after my dad sadly passed away, it took Mom and I quite a while to actually decide to do anything, because it was obviously a really emotional time for us. And then we just thought, Dad always was quite, he was an artist, right? So he had a bit of an ego that came with that. And he was always a bit annoyed that brands didn't recognize that he did, or they didn't declare that he did the designs. And later on, it became more and more apparent. And, he really wanted to be recognized for the work that he had done. And what we noticed with Mom is that Dad became really famous for two designs, the Royal Oak and the Nautilus, absolutely incredible designs. But we know that he had so much more. He did so much more, and we wanted people to know about that. So Mom founded the Gérald Genta Heritage Association, which is essentially point of contact, or a place where we can start talking and continuing to push Dad's legacy. So we do lots of things. We collaborate with other brands. We did a auction of just a few of the many thousands of designs that Dad did with Sotheby's. We did so much, which essentially was to keep educating people about what Dad was so good at.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned your mother. What is the relationship that you have with your mother now, and in terms of keeping that legacy alive? What role does she play? And I imagine, a lot of people want to hear her insights in her life, lifelong partner with your dad. So
absolutely. I mean, Mom is extraordinary, and I mean, she is definitely the biggest part of this. I just honestly just have the privilege to follow her in this adventure, and just to, keep telling Dad's, but also Mom's story, because Mom, ever since the 80s, was next to Dad. And she was the business brain of the two. And she is the key person who was able to make space in dad's life so that he could create. So it's wonderful because dad could had the life that he always desired, which was to create every hour of every day, because mom took all that weight off his shoulders and just kept, doing the accounting, the marketing, the dealing with production delays and employees and all of this kind of stuff. So of course she is an integral part of Gérald Genta Heritage because she provides all of the stories, she knows absolutely everything. So I am just the channel, but actually she brings the information and I just share it.
Fantastic. And you mentioned that, and something that I read a lot about is now that your father, Mr. Genta, considered himself an artist, not so much as a watch designer. And even on your website, the association has the famous saying that he was a Picasso of watches. How do you see him? Do you see him as an artist first, watch designer second? How do you see his creative side play? How do you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because as a child, I didn't quite understand the world of watches. I didn't really know what dad was famous for. I could kind of see, collectors coming for dinner at home and the way they were acting around dad. I thought, oh, maybe dad does something great, but I didn't really get it. So my experience of watching my father work every day was actually that of an artist. So every morning he would get dressed very elegantly, always a suit and a tie, even if he was designing from home. And he would design watches in the morning and then he'd have lunch. And then every afternoon he'd move to the other room where there was his canvases and his paints and he would start painting. So for me, if someone had asked me back then, what does your father do, as all teachers and kids ask, I would have always said my father's an artist because that's what I witnessed every day. And that's certainly how dad would have wanted to be perceived, because dad famously said he didn't like watches. Now that does speak to his provocative side, I think, but also he came from a very humble background and one where he couldn't afford to be an artist. He needed to make money. And as he always said, if I had been in Italy, I would have designed cars. If I had been in France, it would have been fashion or jewelry. I'm in Switzerland, so I'll design watches. But watches for him represented so much limitation. It's such a small object. He couldn't be completely free. And he tried to bring that freedom that he had in his mind to the world of watches. But what he couldn't wait to do was to paint in the afternoon.
Yeah. No, amazing. And you mentioned that, you saw your dad growing up, you saw him painting as you grew up. And was there a turning point that you realized, that your father was such an important figure in the world of watches? Did that ever, when did you realize that, like, wow, actually, my dad is quite unique?
I always knew he was quite unique, but in a different way, just because of the way he just behaved, and he really had the personality of an artist. No, I didn't. To be very honest, I think I realized this very late. I would even say maybe too late, sadly, because I would have asked so many questions if I had realized sooner. But my parents always sort of shielded me from this. So I wasn't brought to big events or things like this. So I didn't quite realize. People would tell me, you're in front of my father, oh, your father, he is the maestro, even my father tried to tell me once, it's a funny anecdote here. He used to go to Japan a lot because he was working with Seiko on the Criador and designed many beautiful watches for them. And and once we came back from Japan, and he told me, "Oh, Japan is so great. Everybody calls me maestro. So from today, Alexia," and I must have been 14. "From today, I want you to call me maestro, no more dad." And he really meant it, you know, that this was not a joke. And of course, as a teenager, that did not go down so well. So no, to answer your question, I didn't always quite realize, but I always realized that he had a very different way of looking at the world because he was kind to share it with me.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Is it? I heard on actually I read it on one of the pieces that he was actually kicked out from what a convention because he had that first Mickey Mouse watch. And I think it was
No,
one of
that's
those.
not quite right. So he wasn't kicked out, he walked out.
Ah,
He walked out, and that again is a very Gérald Genta thing to do. Basically, you were talking about the Disney watches.
the Disney watch is correct. Yeah, the
Yeah.
first unveiling of these
So
breaking barriers in the watch world by bringing these elements, which cartoonish in a way.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that was an incredible story, and it was born from. So he designed the collection Fantasy, it was called, with Disney characters inside. It was born from a collaboration, well, just from a request, really, from the CEO of Disney back then, called Michael Eisner, and who had asked for a Bambi watch for his own mother. And Dad loved it. He loved the combination of something so whimsical and so playful with haute horlogerie. I mean, for him, it was just the perfect thing. In which today, when you see all the other brands doing it, and we saw, you know, AP with the Black Panther and all these different iterations, it doesn't seem disruptive. But for back in the day, this was nuts. And he arrived at, I think it was called, I don't know if it was called SIHH or if it was, I'm not sure, but at that convention in Geneva. And while, you know, every brand arrived with the latest, you know, minute repeater and the perfect complication, everything, he arrived and only Mickey, Donald, etc. And naturally, the people in that industry, all Swiss, all very traditional, you know, looked at it and they were shocked and they were judging it. And one of the CEOs of these brands came to my father and said, "This is nonsense. You cannot do this. This is an insult to the watch industry." And Dad said, "You think this is an insult? Walt Disney brought more joy to the world than any of you ever did." And then said, "I'm leaving." And in fact, the head of Cartier at the time saw Dad doing that, and he was very good friends with Dad. And he said, "What's happening?" And and Dad explained, and he said, "Oh, you're leaving? I'm leaving too." And the two of them just left. With my poor mother thinking I need to get orders to pay salaries, and you know, and this outburst of my husband is going to cost me money. Like, what am I going to do? Like, there's always a wider context in these scenarios, right?
Yeah, which is very typical in the art world. You know, it's so difficult because, as you said, you know, your father is an artist, a true artist. You know, I think some of the, if I may, you know, some of the ego, some of the attitudes are, you know, they come with the territory. You know, he had to be that way in order to create, you know, in order to express himself. That's what artists do. But yeah, you have the reality. You know, you have to make money. You need to have, you know, you have employees, you have responsibilities, financial responsibilities, and you have to. So I think the relationship, from what you're telling me, the relationship with, you know, your mom and your dad was crucial in, at one hand, maintaining the artistic integrity, but also the commercial balance of it, isn't it? And the watch world is like that. And I don't know, the watch world sometimes can be very ostentatious and very, you know, there's a lot of money involved, isn't there? So it's not an easy environment to work with.
It's not. And I think that mom was so lucky to meet dad, and dad was so lucky to meet mom, because the reason why he was able to be so creative is because mom made the space for him to do that, right? And that meant that he never saw his work as a business. So he didn't feel the financial pressure. He didn't feel like he needed to please people. He should please people because he needed to make money, but he didn't feel that because mom took that away. And in fact, it allowed him to be so, like, even better at his job because it allowed him to be 100% instinctive, never caring what other companies were doing. You know, if the trend was doing big watches, he didn't feel the pressure to do big watches. He remained independent, and it allowed him to be this visionary that he was always be. At least he always was a visionary, and mom allowed it to continue as he became more and more successful. He never turned into a businessman.
Yeah, no, fantastic, amazing. Do you know if he had a preferred design? Was he proud of his creations? Because you said he didn't like watches, but again, it's just an expression. I don't think we can take that literally, but was there a piece at some time that he would bring out and mention to you, or?
Yes, of course. So definitely his favorite watches were his own, the ones that carried the name Gérald Genta, simply because he was so proud to have gotten to that point, and because it wasn't answering a brief. It was really what he woke up to design that day, rather than answering another company's brief. So the Gérald Genta watches were his favorite. And I'm going to give you a bit of a non-answer, I'm afraid, but it's the truth. And I remember him telling me this when I had asked him that question, which is he always preferred the watch that he will design tomorrow. Like, Dad was not someone who was looking at the past. He was never looking at yesterday's design. He was already bored by that design. And if I dared, because every day when I came back from school, he would show me his day's result. So it was always, here's the watch design and here's my painting. And I learned not to do this anymore because I made the mistake. I told him once, I really preferred the one you did yesterday. And he was so mad because for him, it was obvious that the one of today and the one of tomorrow are so much better. So, yeah.
No, amazing. What about his paintings? What style do you think? I saw some of his work, and it's quite abstract in a way as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Over time, it evolved. If you look at, he painted all his life, and I'm currently doing the work of linking his painting style to where he was in his life. And that's super interesting. And actually, you can see this in the watch design as well, how at the beginning of his paintings, he was very much doing more, let's say, nature morte, so like exactly, a painting of an apple, whatever. And like the landscape was fairly gray, quite sad and gloomy, and that just shows a difficult life at the beginning. And as the years progress, as he finds success and freedom, you can see more and more colors. It's becoming much more vibrant. You can see clearly when he moves to Monaco. It's like he discovers light, like that south of France. You probably have that in Brazil, that beautiful sky. And it's a light that you don't get in many places. So you see that. And you see that in the watch designs as well. I mean, you can see that at the beginning, you're looking at very pure, very refined, more traditional watches. And then when you move into the 90s, it becomes very flamboyant. So it's how he evolved. And this is, it shows the mind of an artist. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to, I think your father really stands out being such an artist in the watch world, because I think a lot of designs today are so much focused on commercial appeal, you mentioned the Black Panthers and all these collaborations. But in a way, we cannot forget that, that watchmaking is an art, isn't it? It comes back from when people were trying to understand the concept of time through gears and artistry and architecture. And I think your dad really was able to bring such an elegance to the watch world that maybe that wasn't there before. And I think, how do you see his legacy today in the watch world?
What do you mean?
Do you think your father inspired new watch designers? Do you think
So
people?
yes, of course. I think that people are inspired by Dad, but not always in the bestest of ways. You see a lot of lookalike designs of what he has done. I think and that's the story I'm telling everybody, because I think and that is what Dad was always advising, is don't look at other watches, don't look at what was done in the past, but look at nature, look at architecture, look at what inspires you and design from that point of view. So it's less about being a product designer, but more coming at it from an emotional point of view, and putting that on paper. And I think that Dad is an incredibly inspiring figure in this world that is becoming more and more business minded. You walk into one of those brands, you buy the watch, and you come out and you can resell it at a higher value. It's not very romantic, right? I mean, it's just like, it's a business, and it's the business of waiting lists and all that kind of stuff. But Dad actually gives poetry to the industry. It's something so romantic, and it's such a beautiful story that I think gives soul to an industry that is becoming more and more about business.
Exactly. I mean, despite the successes of the Royal Oak and the Nautilus, it's obviously that, exactly, your dad should inspire not by his designs, but by who he was and what he was trying to accomplish. I think that's absolutely right. And I would imagine a lot of that has to do with the work you do today. Do you, in terms of, I wanted to ask, in terms of his paintings, do you have exhibitions? I mean, do you have a lot of work a lot of paintings that your dad did, and what are the plans for that?
Yeah, so at the moment we've done a book with all of his paintings chronologically. So we have this done, and we are working with paintings. I don't have exact project information, any exhibition yet confirmed. There are many opportunities, and it's my dream today is to get Dad recognized as an artist, as a painter, because that's what he would have always wanted. So this is a true passion, project, or it's something I really want to happen, because it would have meant so much to Dad. Now we're really looking at how to approach this in the bestest of ways. My goal is not to sell a couple of paintings for a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, this is not what I want to do. I really want people to recognize him as the painter, irregardless of the watch design. And this is a lot of work happening. And as soon as I have concrete news, which won't be so long, I will let you know for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, please do let me know. As I said, especially in Brazil, I think I've seen a growth of the watch world, and people are starting to look into the history. And yeah, your father is such an influential figure that I think that we should look. And it's so important what you just said, because it's so important to look beyond his designs, and see the man and the work and what he was trying to do. Never looking back, just, always forward. Do you have a favorite piece of it? I know, today when you look back, do you have a favorite painting or a favorite artwork of his? A watch or
in terms of paintings, I have a favorite era, and then there's just one that always makes me smile, and I have it at home, where it was as a teenager again, and I told him that that his paintings lately always look the same. This is just an idiotic little guy, but that's what you go through the ages. And he grabbed a paintbrush, put it in black, put some black paint, and then just went like this, like, does that look the same to you? And it's my favorite painting, because I just love looking at it, and I feel like I collaborated. I feel like there's a piece of me in that. So it really reminds me of a funny time. In terms of the watch, gosh, I change a lot. Um, I've always said, and I can't believe that that's what LVMH is working on now. And of course, we're working together now. But I love the urchin, oursin, it's called, that dad designed in the 90s. And it was, what I love about it is that the shape is so unusual. It's such a, it's such an audacious, and it's such a, honestly, it's such a risk-taking move to go for a shape like this, and yet it remains elegant and beautiful, and you know, it doesn't, it's not offensive. You know, I find that sometimes if you want to be very creative with watch design, it becomes really hard to wear. So you're making a bold move by wearing it, but actually it doesn't look that nice. And I think that that's real talent, was to push the boundaries of audacity, but remaining elegant. And I think that that watch that he designed, and my favorite is the one my mom wears, and I'm still trying to figure out where the key to her safe is, so I can just take that watch. I love it. And I've been trying to steal it for a very long time, but this is my favorite. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I've read as well that he designed thousands of watches. Is it true? Is it thousands really? Do you have a number or something?
Yeah.
Really, that many?
Yeah, it really is thousands, because he was able to design in one morning so many watches. It was unbelievable how many watches he was designing in one go. Now, of course, sometimes it was different variations of the same watch, but in reality, the versatility, the amount of watches that he has designed are in the thousands, are in the tens of thousands.
It's even hard to comprehend, isn't it? I mean, just
yeah.
It's just...
It's when you are, because we had for a long time the archives, so all the papers, all like put in little drawers and everything. When you look at it, you realize physically how many designs, and a lot of them were actually lost, given often when you design a watch, you give the design to the client. And back then, archives were not as important as they are today, right? Like in the 70s, 80s, people didn't care about keeping archives.
No, unbelievable. And he used to do, just talking about the process itself now, did he used to do all freehand, or did he always came up with the specificity of the millimeters, the length, the width? He designed all that, or was that down to the engineers, or he gave already the project fully with all the specifications?
So in terms of the process, so he would in his suit sit at his desk, he would have his compass, draw a circle, 2 lines in the middle, and then he would start designing something that he doesn't know what he's going to design. He's not thinking, today I'm going to design a lady's watch in the shape of a heart. That was not what he was doing. He really, it was like the design came pouring out of him without knowing what he was doing. At the same time, he was designing it to scale. So that meant that you could put the paper on your wrist and it would be the right size. So he was doing that. Now, of course, he wasn't designing the mechanism inside. Then that came to a conversation with his team. And he had a wonderful team at his factory that, it was amazing because they were problem solvers. They just knew they were creating something incredible. They were not afraid to be different. And they had this drive and excitement, and they were really stimulated by being sort of like like today you would say they would hustle, you know, like they would go a bit rogue and they would just be like, "Oh, why don't we do this?" You know, they would, you know, it wasn't like, let's say Rolex, which is like a very clear manufacturing process. Here it was sort of like from beginning to finish, you do the watch, like figure it out. And they loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. You just made, did your father ever work with Rolex? Did he do anything for them, or
Yes,
any
he did the King Midas, which I
Yeah.
love. And if anyone has one to sell, please call me. It's really hard to find. And yes, he did a few Rolex designs.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the King Midas. Yeah. He's done it. Even I think even Timex. You know, I read that his design of I don't know if this is true also, but one of his designs for Timex sold over I don't know how many millions and millions of copies in the United States or something.
Oh gosh, okay. Let me look into it before I confirm something that I'm not sure of.
Yeah, but somewhere I read it that one of the, and I couldn't find the design that it was, but yeah, he said it was sold in millions in the United States. And looking at the watch world today, do you have when Watches and Wonders happens, and there's several big fairs in Geneva and even Dubai and other places? Do you look at that? Do you participate in any way? Do you bring the association to these locations to highlight your dad's work? What's the relationship with the association and the watch industry today?
So yes, I am always looking for meaningful opportunities to tell that story. So every year there are so many opportunities. It's not it's incredible how many people want to work to make that happen. So of course we're always at Watches and Wonders because there's always a watch being launched that was Dan's, basically. So this year was amazing. We were very kindly invited by IWC because they were talking a lot about the Ingénieur watch that was designed by Dad. And they did this absolutely beautiful short movie telling the story behind how he designed it and how it failed and then later on came back. So that's one, for example. Then recently we worked with Creador under the umbrella of Seiko to relaunch the locomotive. You know, we work with Gérald Genta. I have the tremendous privilege to work with LVMH to relaunch Gérald Genta and to you know, it's amazing how much they care about making the brand authentic to what Dad would have wanted. You know, they don't have to, but they really care. So I really appreciate that. And that's an amazing adventure. So yeah, and in Dubai Watch Week this year, I'll be talking. This is something that terrifies me and keeps me up at night, but I will be talking. So there are so many ways to share his story. And in fact, his story is huge. It's not even enough time because it's a long life filled with adventures with brands, with his own brand, with incredible clients, famous people. And, you know, it's so cool.